WeChat is everything. First of all, it's a social media platform. The second thing is with WeChat Pay, which is the link directly to your Chinese bank account, which makes it super seamless to make any payment transaction.
Hi, I am Siara, your host for Bridge to Chinese Consumers. This video series brings you market insights, consumer trends, and everything connecting you to the Chinese consumer market. Our guests are business leaders, entrepreneurs, and specialists on the topic of China. And today we're going to do a deep dive on WeChat. What makes one app so powerful? You know, China is a digital-led country. It has more than 900 million internet users. And just to put that into perspective, it is more than the entire population of Europe. Our guest today, Jons Slemmer, who is the founder and CEO of Waya Global. Jons is a digital serial entrepreneur based in Chengdu and with ongoing ventures in China, Hong Kong, and Estonia. Jons help global businesses launch and succeed in China by increasing digital marketing exposure and sales on the Chinese internet and social media platforms. He's also a podcast co-host to China Business Cast. Welcome, Jons.
Thanks so much for having me, Annie. Great to be here.
So originally from Netherlands, grew up, born and raised, and studied in the Netherlands. So perhaps you can give us an overview about your career background and what made you move to China 7 or 8 years ago?
I came to China in first 2007. The Netherlands is a great country, but here it's quite a bit more adventurous, and I was in the Netherlands. I didn't really have an opportunity to live in China. So when that opportunity sort of came, I was in a crossroads in my life. Do I go left or do I go right? I just decided to go right and go to China. But actually living here is different, right? And that's what I wanted to experience and explore.
So tell us, you first went to, or you decided to live in China in 2016, and it was you started a company, Red Star, right? What made you start your own company rather than working for someone else? And how did you start a company to service businesses on the Chinese digital landscape?
Yeah, so I came here in 2014, and I started the company in 2016, 17, I think. End of 2016, because everything is so different. The whole ecosystem is different, all the platforms are different, the rules and regulations are different. So I needed 2 years roughly to get familiar enough and felt comfortable enough to basically pick up where I left, because in the Netherlands I had my own businesses as well. It was really natural for me to basically pick up again where I left. I just needed basically 2 years of getting more familiar and immersing myself. And so I went through all the things myself. Like I tried opening accounts, running social media, following the right regulations, applying for licenses, all those things. I always want to do them first on my own and figure them out before I feel comfortable enough to help other people with that. So that's basically how it went.
Probably about in 2019, Red Star went through a rebranding into the company that you are the CEO of now, which is Waya Global. So who is Waya Global? What do you do, and what type of clients or the services that you provide your clients?
We service medium to large customers, and we help them with their marketing and their technical elements where they need support. Might be sometimes it's from those licensing aspects, sometimes it's from help us get a digital infrastructure set up in China, and the other part is around social media, helping with setting up and going through those verification processes of social media accounts. So that's a very brief introduction.
Speaking about the China internet landscape, can you give us an overview of the difference between Chinese internet and Western internet?
I assume that most of the audience that listens to your podcast is familiar that the big platforms in the West are not available in China. The YouTube, the Instagram, the Twitter, etc., Facebook. It's just completely non-existent unless you find a way around the Great Firewall. So that Great Firewall makes a very unique ecosystem, because for everything there is a homegrown solution. So at one point the ecosystem started diverging. The Chinese ecosystem developed with its own platforms, with the WeChat, which you mentioned earlier, but the Weibo and the Xiaohongshu, international brands have to first realize, they think, we know there's that barrier. Initially, they don't always think they think there's a little bit of overlap, and it's a pretty strict, hard line in the sand, basically.
What is China Firewall? What license do you need to have a website in China?
It's not only about a website. So I think here it's important to make a distinction. If we're talking B2C, Chinese consumers actually rarely use websites. So websites in the B2C segment are not used less than 1% of the time. So 99% of all internet usage is on a mobile phone, first of all. And then on the mobile phone, it's all the platforms, right? So it's just some kind of app that you're running on your phone, which is connected to one of the major ecosystems, or Alibaba, which has dozens of different platforms, and Tencent, which has dozens of platforms. And there's another few larger players, but they all have their own digital ecosystems and their own platforms. In the B2B, a website can still be relevant. That's where we help clients usually when they want to have a website, and that's where one of those licenses can come in. But that license is not only for just having a website, but as if you want to publish anything on the Chinese internet, running your own application, running your own website, running your own sort of media services, then you need to acquire one or multiple licenses. And that's where that then comes into play.
Every app or every ecosystem that you wish to be in, they have their own license, so to speak. So I can't just go to WeChat and open a business account, so to speak.
You can, because WeChat has taken care of all those things. You're using someone else's platform to be present on there, and that is perfectly fine. You do have to follow all the rules of, in this case, of WeChat, of Tencent, and therefore go through a verification process, which can be quite strenuous and like a little bit complicated sometimes. Because if you're on their platform, they take on responsibility for what you're doing. So they want to know a lot about your business information, what you're going to do. As a consumer, it's much easier to get an account because they require less information, but you still have to sign up with a phone number or an email or those kind of things.
I always say to businesses wishing to enter into the China market, the first point of entry is to be within the digital ecosystem. Just by having a website with, a Chinese translation doesn't mean that it's accessible in China, right? So can you give us an overview? Like if I am in China right now and I wanted to have to view on Facebook, what happens for those who have never been to China and don't really understand what China Firewall is?
Going to Google, going to YouTube, going to Facebook, going to Instagram, just nothing will happen. The apps or the websites won't load. The usage of a VPN, which is the method around the firewall, is very common. Technically, it's illegal, but millions of Chinese people do it. Don't expect the average Chinese consumer to have a VPN. They are very comfortable within their Chinese platforms. They can buy everything, they can see everything they want to see. So you cannot expect the Chinese consumer to see something on Facebook.
WeChat, or in Chinese, it's called Weixin, was first released 10 years ago, only in 2011, developed by the Tencent Holdings Limited. When it first released, it was just a messaging app like any other messaging app, such as WhatsApp, but it gradually added functions like phone and video calling or posting photos to your friends, ordering taxi and food, and then e-commerce capabilities and WeChat Pay. Now, by 2018, it became the standalone app with over 1 billion monthly active users. So what is WeChat and what makes WeChat such a super app that it differentiates from all the other apps?
WeChat is everything. First of all, it's a social media platform, so it's a communication platform. That's the first big point with all your friends and family and networks. So it's really easy to connect with people. There's groups where you can have around different themes and communication. So that's another big thing. The second thing is with WeChat Pay, which is the link directly to your Chinese bank account, which makes it super seamless to make any payment transaction.
But with the WeChat Pay, right? Like, say, for example, I use Apple iPhones, and if I need to pay anything, my bank card is linked to, I can't remember what app, but my bank card is linked to my phone and I can just scan it. Why do Chinese people, or why people live in China, go into WeChat to pay for their stuff?
The point that you just referred to, people in China, they don't have credit cards. I think one reason for that is because merchants, like shops and people who are receiving the money, the fees for a credit card transaction are relatively high, and that has never got really adopted by the shops because they didn't want to pay those commissions. So before that, it was just paying with cash, but that really quickly switched when WeChat and Alipay came on the scene with their QR codes, because the transaction costs are really small, and it made it really easy. You don't have to install anything. It's just literally you can print an A4 piece of paper with a static QR code, stick it on your wall. I guess
if you are in any business and you want to enter into China, be within the Chinese digital ecosystem, do you develop a website, or is WeChat simply enough?
Again, there's a differentiation between the B2C and the B2B. And also really depends on how aggressively you want to enter the Chinese market. So if we're talking B2C, I would definitely not go with our own website. That, in my opinion, would be a waste of time, energy, or money. You need to be on the platforms where your users are. So depending on what kind of product you have, there will be most likely some kind of form of the Alibaba ecosystem. But depending on your specific niche, there could be other platforms that are more suitable for your products. If we're talking the B2B, digital entry, that is one necessary part. In my personal opinion, you need to have a local team, because China is still very much a place based on relationships and who knows who and trust that you build up over time. But to give your local team tools and a head start or a good impression, you need to have those digital elements in place to start building that initial relationship. So where they can come and visit people, have meetings, go through the whole Chinese business relationship building process. And then once that is done, you can use those tools to keep servicing clients, because that relationship is already there. You're already maintaining it maybe in an offline way every few months, every year or whatever. But then you can integrate them into your online tools where you're servicing them from selling directly products in a B2B way to online tools that could be directly through WeChat or providing customer support through WeChat, which is very common.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Going back to a bit of basic in WeChat, there are different accounts for businesses. Can you run us through the type of accounts that WeChat provides?
Previously, or there's still multiple different types of accounts, but there's only one type of account that I could recommend right now, which is the service account. The other account type that was a subscription account, but that is basically for a news outlet. So if you're publishing lots of news, maybe on a daily basis or multiple times per day, then that is the account for you. But if we're talking for a B2C or a B2B, that is just unrealistic to put out multiple times a day, or even once a day. That's a lot of effort for most brands.
So there are 3 different types of account, really depending on what type of business that you are in, and the account will be, choose an account that is suitable for your business. Now, there is this thing called the WeChat mini program, right? So can you give us an overview of what mini program is, and what is the difference between mini program compared to account in WeChat?
The account is where you can publish news. If you have the service account, you can publish 4 times a month. If you want to do more complicated things, more interaction, see the WeChat mini program as an application. So in China, a lot of functionalities are being integrated into a WeChat mini program, which is just a mini small application that runs within the WeChat ecosystem, which you can open with just one click or one scan of a QR code. It opens, it loads in seconds because it's internet technology or website technology. It's directly integrated with the WeChat ecosystem, so it knows my identity, so you can automatically sign up where you don't have to do any verification basically. And it is used for thousands of different use cases, from e-commerce to making reservations to making appointments to any kind of transactional element can be done in there. So you should see it as a tool, and this is the philosopher or the designer and the founder of WeChat, a guy called Alan Zhang. He sees it really WeChat as a tool. You use it for something and then you close it. And these mini programs are for that very much specifically as well. So I need to pay. I use a WeChat mini program by scanning a QR code and ordering something at McDonald's, for example. I see the menu, I order what I want, I pay immediately, and they receive the order, and a minute later my order is ready. But then I close that WeChat mini program and I don't use it till the next time that I need it. So it's really a small tool. You use it for a minute or a few minutes to do something, and then it's closed. So that's very much a transactional element that can be built in those WeChat mini programs, but they're being used everywhere in China. In food ordering is a lot, but also e-commerce in shops can go through that, or at least the payment can go through that. If you're at a conference, you can see maybe the schedule, or you can order something extra with that. So there's a lot of different use cases that it can be used for.
So, you know, here in the West, if you are developing a brand or an e-commerce store, you in your strategy, you want to develop your own app, right? But in China, do businesses actually develop their own app anymore, or is it just a mini program?
So in general, you go through the platforms, and that does not have to mean just one platform, especially if you're a larger brand, and especially if it's in the B2C segment. Usually that's a range of different platforms where you want to be present. But yeah, you don't develop your own platform, your own app, or your own website, just because China has really become complicated in terms of its regulations. So we talked a little bit earlier about licensing. The whole process is so complicated that you need to hire consultants.
What mistake have you made in your Chinese business journey that you can share with us?
So building a team, the HR aspect of it, I guess my biggest mistake is underestimating that process. Once you hire people, maintaining them, keeping that relationship, even though you're maybe in the same office, spend a lot of time and efforts on that. I think that's just generally in business, but especially maybe building a local team here in China.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for your time today in really helping us understand the internet landscape in China, as well as WeChat, and why it is called the SuperApp. For anyone that are wishing to get in touch with Jons, we will provide the Waya Global website as well as his LinkedIn profile in our credit notes. And also, if you want to learn more about China, really subscribe to their podcast, which is China Business Cast. They interview a lot of business leaders as well as entrepreneurs, really talking about and helping people learn about China. Thank you so much for your time, Jons. I really appreciate it, and we have learned so much today.